back, Pure Pickers, to another edition of Pure Picks. I'm your host, James, and we're here to break down Blanchfield versus Fiorot coming up this fight night in Atlantic City. Before we get to that, wanted to go over some results from last week. Pretty much lost a unit this week or last week. We had a bit of a technical difficulty here in terms of putting in the units, but if you just kind of do the move that we actually did, we end up losing like 0.43 more. So pretty much lost the unit. I mean, that's obviously not great. This is something that we've been trying to get some positive units going on, and it's been a bit of a dry spell. So let's go over some results that we had for this last week. Yusuf Zalal, we had that. I was pretty happy that we had that. And this was just a pick that I would say was a great live opportunity as well. And that's something that we want to also point out is that although we may not be having the greatest luck in terms of our bet MMA tips and the picks that go out in the Discord, our live action has actually been doing pretty well. And you follow those alerts, you would have also cashed in on some of the live opportunities. For example, we had Zalal live as well after we saw a little bit more of a kind of gap between Billy Q and Zalal. We were on Zalal pre-fight, and during the fight, we were more than happy to put in more units on Zalal. Also, Rose Namajunas, this turned out to be a good bet just because she won. However, it was a pretty close decision, and there's a lot of could go either ways in that I've seen on Twitter. But regardless, we still cashed on that end. So just wanted to tell you, Pure Pickers, that follow the live alerts that we have throughout the fight night. We've been doing pretty well there, and we're going to continue to see if there's any entries or plays that could happen in a live betting opportunity. But going back to these picks, I mean, Muhammad Usman, that was a wrong bet. I mean, he won round one, but we just saw that he was not as good as Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin pretty much outstruck him, outfought him in the last two rounds. Had a good parlay with over 2.5 for Parkin, though. That was a good play. And then we had Rose there. Tafa, that was a bad pick. I mean, this guy had some low fight IQ. He threw one high kick and then one knee, got taken down both times, and then Carl Williams just decided to out-grapple him for the rest of the fight. So although he was live for certain moments during that stand-up battle and exchanges, whenever Carl Williams dove for the legs, he usually got the takedown and nullified Justin Tafa's 100% takedown defense. This was the first time that he got tested, and he failed the test. Talbot, I wish we just had a straight money line play on him. I'm a believer now after seeing that matchup. I think this guy is pretty nasty. He reminds me of like a nasty Sean O'Malley, just a brawler who has some precision. That's some scary stuff right there. So, and this guy seems like he takes no damage. Crazy good chin as well. The over 2.5, obviously, I think that if there was some more grappling in those exchanges, I think that would have been a good play. But obviously, it turned into more of a striking battle. And AJ Dobson, I mean, I was on the Edmund side, but yeah, I did not expect this myself. I think the over 2.5, I was confident with it, and it just didn't hit. Padilla, Erin's, obviously this was the technical issue. We wanted to do Padilla and win, but we ended up losing one unit there. So overall, not a great night on this, but going back to our live betting opportunities, I think just follow the Discord alerts for live bets. They've been doing pretty well, and we'll continue to find any entries that we can find for you guys out there. Once again, purepicks.gg, that's the website. And to get all the alerts, all the real-time live betting opportunities, go to purepicks.gg, log in, sign up through the Discord, $10 a month. I think that we're doing a pretty good return on investment so far if you factor in the live betting opportunities. However, let's go to this week. I think, Blanchfield versus Fiorot, this is going to be an even better card than last week. And I personally feel pretty confident. I know that some of the other Pure Pickers on the Pure Pick team, Alex, Gerard, Kevin, even, we feel pretty confident in this week that I think that this is going to be a good card for most. So let's lock into it. The first fight, and I'm going to go through the breakdowns right now and going to try to switch it up a little bit more. Going to go for more of like a quick pick kind of deal. Wanted to just give you thoughts on the fight card specifically just the matchup and the breakdown, just so we could get a little bit more efficient. And I'm going to go through that right now. So without further ado, let's go with the first fight of the night. We have Angel Pacheco and Pacheco versus Caolan Loughran. Angel 7-2. He's 4-1 his last 5, and he's coming off that decision loss to Danny Silva, who beat Josh Culibao, I think 2 weeks ago. Caolan Loughran 8-1, 4-1 in his last 5 as well. He's coming off that decision loss against Taylor Lapilus. If we check the odds for this fight, we see that Caolan's a minus 350 favorite. So I understand why. I understand why. I think that before I saw the odds, Caolan Loughran, man, 350. This guy just lost his last fight. I mean, it seemed kind of sketchy to me, the odds. However, just looking back into the tape and more research, I see why he's minus 350 now. I mean, I think that he is the side for this matchup. I feel like the UFC, they're giving him a good matchup with Angel here. Angel Pacheco, he lost his Dana White Contender Series fight and is now making his UFC debut, right? Technically, coming off a loss. So I know that he survived and, he didn't get knocked out by Danny Silva, but there were instances during that matchup where he was more like a punching bag and just absorbing every single shot. I mean, look at this, 13.6 absorb per minute. That's a lot of strikes. He also dished out, obviously, but 35% striking defense. Not a good percentage. So this guy's there to get hit. And also his takedown defense is not that great either. This guy gets taken down as well. I mean, let's look at the odds for the fight. Right now, Caolan Loughran, he's like minus 350 again. I mean, I understand why. I don't think that Angel is going to be able to deter Caolan in this matchup. Caolan's going to be the more dangerous fighter. He has the physical advantages here with the strength. I just don't think that Angel is dangerous enough to really deter Caolan from aggressively striking or grappling. So he's going to be a punching bag. There, get hit, little to no defense. I do think that Angel is tough, so I'm going to give him Caolan via decision. It's going to be my pick. However, I can even see a finish. I just think that being tough and absorbing damage is a good thing until that chin goes. And I think he's going to take some damage during this fight because Caolan is going to come back, especially after that last loss. I mean, he was matched up with a pretty tricky matchup against Taylor Lapilus, who's a UFC vet at this point. I mean, he's coming off his second stint, so this is his second time in the UFC. Lapilus kind of outvetted Caolan in the last matchup, and I feel like Caolan's going to come out here pretty amped up, looking to go for the finish. So, pick here is Caolan by decision, but I can see a finish. I would say he's parlay safe to put in parlay. I think I'm pretty high on Caolan this week. Moving on to the next fight that we have on the prelims, we have Andre Petroski versus Jacob Malkoun. Obviously, Petroski, he is 10-2. He is 4-1 his last 5. He's actually coming off of that KO loss in the first round, pretty early in the first round to Michel Pereira. Jacob Malkoun, 7-3. He is 3-2 in his last 5. He's coming off that loss, but he was obviously winning against Cody Brundage. He just did some illegal elbows to the back of the head, and they actually ended up disqualifying him. So, tough loss there. He was winning that fight, well on his way to a KO victory, but that's the UFC for you. Sometimes there's just some crazy decisions by the ref, and that kind of stuff happens right there. Looking at the odds for this fight right now, we have Jacob Malkoun minus 210. Actually, he's turned to minus 200 just now, so minus 200. For this fight, I think I'm pretty confident in siding with one person, and the person that I'm actually going to side with is I have to side with Jacob Malkoun here. I think that he is the better fighter overall. I feel like Petroski is a little overrated. I mean, he has not improved much since entering the UFC. The only advantage that I see that Petroski will have in this matchup is that just pure Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because he is a pretty good Jiu-Jitsu player. I just think that that's going to be negated by Malkoun's wrestling and grappling prowess himself. I mean, I feel like he's the better person in this fight is going to mix it up with the striking and the grappling. And also, I feel like if this is a striking matchup, because both their grappling might cancel out, I feel like Malkoun's just shown me a lot more improvement on the feet. Petroski hasn't shown much technicality in terms of his striking. He has some good power just because he's a really big guy with some strength, but not good technical striking on defense or offense. I just feel like he is absorbing a lot more strikes. And you saw that with the last fight. I mean, he just got KO'd by Michel Pereira pretty early. I also think that he's on the gas later just because, his frame and body is more defined than Malkoun's, obviously, and he carries a lot of muscle, and he just has had a tendency to gas late in fights. And I think this is going to happen in this fight as well. Malkoun fights with a pretty good pace and gas tanks, so he's going to have the advantage the later the fight goes. I really liked Malkoun in his fight against Brendan Allen, who's a top ranked fighter in this middleweight division. It was a pretty closely contested fight. And honestly, it could have gone either way, 29-28. If you look at the scorecards for the media, it was pretty split, 29-28. So I think that was a very close fight. And I just feel that I like that fight more than any of Petroski's fights so far. So give me Malkoun via decision. I think this fight's going to go over 2.5. I'm going to keep track of it for now. Malkoun minus 200 might be something I want to play, but I feel like the over 2.5 could be a better value at this point. I don't see a finish here. I think that both these guys are going to do a lot of grappling on the ground, and it's going to be a lot of takedown attempts, takedown stuffs. I think it's going to be that kind of fight, and obviously we're going to get some striking, but I just don't think either of these guys are that dangerous on their feet, and it's going to turn into a grappling match, and I think the over could be a good play there. So yeah, give me the over 2.5 on that fight. Let's move on to the next fight that we have on the prelims. We have Melissa Gatto versus Victoria Dudakova. Gatto 8-2-2. She's 3-2 in her last 5, and she's coming off that split decision loss to Ariana Lipski, facing off against Victoria Dudakova 8-0. She's 5-0 in her last 5, coming off that decision win over Jin Yu Frey. One thing to note, Victoria will be going up in weight during this fight. So I think she had a missed weight cut in her previous fight. Going to test the upper weight class of 125 in this division, and that's going to be her first fight in the UFC here in that division. Let's look at the odds right now. We have Gatto at minus 146. So interestingly enough, she actually opened up at a plus 185 dog and has since been bet to a favorite. And there's been a lot of heavy action going on that way. So people thought that the odds makers made a mistake there. Yeah, this fight, I have a very limited thoughts on this fight. It's not a fight that I'm looking to play per se. I think that Dudakova, there's going to be a lot of question marks for this fight. And when I'm going for a fight that I want to pick to play, I just feel like I want more certainties and less variables, because we want to be more certain with the units that we lay down. Looking at this fight, though, I mean, we've seen Dudakova get taken down at a lower weight class, and she's going to be matched up with a pretty strong grappler in Gatto. I mean, I think that Gatto is just, she's not the best takedown artist herself, but she's a pretty defined fighter. I mean, she has some strength to her that I think that Dudakova will understand in the first kind of few minutes that Gatto's pretty strong. However, I just feel like Gatto just does too much jiu-jitsu off her back. Sometimes she pulls guard as well, which is just not good for the optics. I feel like both of their grappling, this is going to be a grappling matchup, and either Dudakova is going to impose her will, get the takedowns, and win on top, or she's going to get her takedown stuffed, and Gatto could do the same thing to her. And I'm going to lean towards Dudakova being able to impose her will more so. On the feet, I think that it's actually pretty close. I will say that Gatto's probably a little bit better on the feet. However, I think it's pretty close. So it has all the makings of, for me at least, a split decision kind of deal. For now, I'm gonna lean towards just the veteran being able to outgrind a decision win. I think that her grappling is gonna be a little bit better than Dudakova's. She might be able to reverse some positions as well after she gets taken down, and she stays safe off her back. And on the feet, I think that she does have a slight edge, although it's pretty close. So yeah, give me the veteran in this case, especially with Dudakova going up in weight. I mean, I just feel that that's going to be a potential mistake because she had a lot of advantages at 115. At 125, she gets more suspect to takedowns, getting taken down. I mean, she got taken down by Jin Frey, I believe, and that's not a really good look because I think that grows on the way out. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be a close fight, split decision vibes, and I'm not touching it. Let's move on to the next fight here that we have on the prelims, and there's going to be 14 fights on the card. I think it's going to be a pretty good night overall. Next up, we have Ibo Aslan versus Anton Turkalj. Ibo 12-1. He's 4-1 his last 5. He's coming off of that knockout in the Dana White Contender Series, facing off against Anton Turkalj 8-3. He is 2-3 in his last 5, coming off 3 straight losses, getting KO'd by Tyson Pedro about half a year ago. This is actually a rematch. These guys fought in 2020, and I'll share my thoughts on what happened during that fight. Looking at the odds right now, we have Turkalj and Aslan. Aslan is a minus 125, and he opened up at a minus 180. So there's been some dog action taken on Anton, and I tend to agree with that line movement. I think that, so for the rematch that they had in 2020, I mean, this is going to be a rematch from 2020, and Anton was able to find a kind of a rear naked choke on Ibo. Ibo was doing well in the fight. I think that he just started gassing and he lost his balance on a kick. This was around round 2, I believe, and he allowed Anton to take him down and just lock in a choke, a rear naked choke. Since then, Ibo has gone 4-0, all first round KO finishes. So he's probably taking out a lot of aggression since that loss. I think this is a clear fight for me. I think that Ibo is going to be dangerous round 1, just like he was in the first fight. However, if he does not finish Anton early, and obviously we've seen Anton be finished early before. He got to finish early in his last fight. But if he does not finish Anton early, I see the same thing happening on when Anton's cardio and pace will take over. So right now I lean towards Anton being able to save his UFC job and outlast Ibo and potentially finish him later in the fight. I think a good play would be Anton. Well, my pick here is Anton inside the distance. I think he's either going to get a sub and club or submission. And I think playing Ibo round 1, see if those odds have dropped yet. Playing Ibo round 1, I mean, I think that could be a decent play. Right now, that is plus 140, so not too bad. And then you could play Anton round 2 and round 3 to be kind of safe, so you can cover your bases in all of those cases. Because I think there is going to be a finish here, so I think Turkalj round 2 or Turkalj round 3 could be a good play, or Ibo round 1. I think those are some good stabs. This is also a great live betting opportunity. I mean, let's say that Ibo does not finish Anton. I think that Anton would be a good live betting entry at that point, just because we've seen this happen already. Ibo's last 4 finishes have all been pretty early in the first round as well. So I think that, we just have not seen his cardio be tested since then. Obviously, Anton, he might be a little less durable in this case. So I think that's something that where if you play it, you get plus odds on all those plays. And I think one of those are probably going to hit. So yeah, pickers Anton inside the distance, because I think that he will be able to beat Ibo later on in round 2 or 3. But yeah, as far as like just backing either fighter straight money line, I don't think that's a good play just because I feel like there's not enough value in the money line per se for this fight. Let's move on to the next fight that we have here. We have Connor Matthews versus Dennis Buzukja. Connor Matthews, he is 7-1, coming off a Dana White Contender Series win. He actually has been fighting on Dana White Contender Series twice, I believe. So he won one and lost one. Lost against Francis Marshall. So pretty interesting loss. Dennis Buzukja, 11-4. He is 3-2 in his last 5, and he's actually coming off a loss in the first round against Jamall Emmers about 4 months ago. If we look at the odds for this fight, we have Dennis at -128, opened up at -180. And this is where I agree with the line movement again. I think that Connor Matthews is actually a pretty decent dog, if I do say so myself. I feel like Connor, he just has the game of a dog, a well-rounded, fighter. He's going to continue to throw until the final bell, so he's going to remain active. I feel like Dennis has had tough competition in the UFC thus far, and he's actually a better fighter than what he has shown. However, I just feel that he will be in a dogfight, and I've seen him fold in those situations before. And he's going up against a guy who just will not quit. So both of these fighters have similar skill sets, physical dimensions. I just trust Connor to be more aggressive and be in Dennis's face than I trust Dennis after seeing his last 2 performances. So I'm going with Connor via decision. I will monitor the line movement. If Connor becomes a favorite, maybe that's a sign that, because this one thing I really like is when, this is not the end all be all, obviously, but when a fighter opens up as a dog, then the line flips to a favorite. Usually that's the money trying to tell you that, hey, these odds are wrong. And there was a lot of value in a guy like Connor Matthews. So usually those fighters in that direction win the fight, and I'm going to continue to monitor that line movement. However, I'm not going to have any plays on here for now. I'll just wait and see what the odds potentially look like for that fight. Let's move on to the next fight here that we have on the prelims. We have Julio Arce versus Herbert Burns. I'm shocked that Herbert Burns is coming back. Julio Arce is 18-6. He is 2-3 in his last 5, coming off some alternating wins and losses. And his last loss was to Montel Jackson via decision, facing off against Herbert Burns, 11-4. This is obviously Gilbert's brother. He is 3-2, and he is coming off the kind of the KO loss, exhaustion from damage, and that's a very accurate way to put it. This guy kind of just quit in the cage against Bill Algeo once he got tired. So, yeah, not a good look for his last fight. I'm surprised that he's coming back. Looking at the odds for this fight right now, we have Julio Arce at -400. So, yeah, I was checking this last night, and there was a point where he was -600. I thought that was insane. So, it makes sense that it's going back towards Burns as far as being a closer dog. This fight is also another fight that I'll probably pass on overall. I will have to go Arce here. I think that he's going to win via KO. There's no way I'm playing Herbert Burns in this matchup. I mean, saw a little too much from him and what he did last fight that I don't think any units should be put on him. But yeah, I think Burns is just the definition of a sub or bust kind of guy. I mean, he in his last 2 fights, he can't even prove that can go 2 rounds in the UFC, right? He can barely go 1 round in the UFC. So just very concerning there. Julio has a 95% takedown defense. That's not good either. I mean, not good for Burns, obviously. I think that this 95% takedown defense will be able to keep him safe against a guy like Herbert Burns. And, after, let's say, he stuffs some takedowns and maybe even some sub attempts from Burns, it should be all Arce from there. I mean, he just has to survive like a few minutes Arce just has to survive the first few minutes of the first round, in my opinion. Then I think his stand-up is going to be levels above Herbert Burns, and he should get back on track because, I mean, he's been alternating wins and losses. I think that continues here. He's going to get a win after a loss. So give me Julio Arce in this matchup. Man, at -600, I didn't like it because he's also coming off a year layoff himself. But man, at -400, I think I might want to play that just because I -600 was not good, but I think -400 could be a decent piece. So I'll keep track on that. But yeah, that's something that I might want to attack in a parlay. So right now, pick is Arce via KO, but I'm gonna hold off for now until I see maybe some little better line movement. Maybe we can get to minus 350 perhaps, and then Arce could be even better play at that point. Let's go to the next match on the prelims still, and we have a good one for the women's division. We have Virna Jandiroba versus Lupita Godinez or Lupi. Virna 19-3. She is 3-2 in her last 5, and she's coming off that decision victory over Marina Rodriguez, fighting off against Lupi Godinez 12-3, 4-1 in her last 5, coming off that split decision win over Tabitha Ricci. If you actually watch the fight, I mean, at least for me, I thought she won pretty clearly, and I was very shocked that she had a split decision. So one of those fights where you have to kind of watch the fight to see if it was actually a real split decision. But for me, when I looked at it live, it seemed like Lupi was the clear winner in that matchup. Looking at the odds for this fight, we have Lupi at minus 200, open up at minus 160. So slight action has been taken on Lupi. Yeah, this fight could be tough. I mean, I've been riding Lupi for her last few fights. She's been doing pretty well in her last few fights. Obviously, 4-1, right? But unfortunately, I was also riding her on Angela Hill, and it took me a while to kind of recover from that loss because she should have won that fight, and she just got outvetted by Angela Hill. And maybe she wasn't ready for that, but she has come back with 4 straight wins. Each of them are been getting more convincing. So, or convincing to me as far as she's a high level talent for this division. Yeah, I think that I'm gonna for this fight. I don't know if I want to back either fighter to avoid the headache of just picking a side here. I'm gonna go with the over 2.5 at minus 270 for this fight. That's what the odds were last night. Let's see what it is right now. It's minus 270 still. So yeah, I think that that's a solid parlay piece. I mean, both of these women are more like decision merchants, like when facing similar competition, right? If they're facing competition that is below them, obviously they could potentially get a finish in there. But if you just see most of their wins and how they've been winning, it's been a lot of close fights for similar talent that they're facing. So I think the same thing's going to happen here. I actually think that Lupi is a legit fighter. I think Virna obviously is a legit one too. So I think this fight's going to go decision. I think that this fight will just mainly consist of Virna shooting for takedowns and Lupi having to stuff them for the majority of the fight. I trust Lupi to stay safe even if she gets taken down. I just think that the only danger on this over 2.5 is if obviously Virna finds a sub, which I don't think will happen, or Lupi finds some kind of finish like a sub and club, club and sub, right? And I don't see that happening either. I think Virna's pretty tough, so I consider those to be really low probability outcomes. And I think on the feet though, Lupi will be the better striker and boxer, and I think she should be able to cruise her way to a decision win, but if she can't stuff those takedowns and because Virna goes for the submissions as well, so it's kind of scary facing off against her. I think she has like 13 submissions. Yeah, so she's going for the submission a lot in her fights, and that's something to be aware of for this fight as well. So going with the over 2.5, I like it as a parlay piece. Pick is going to be Lupi by decision, but I like the over 2.5 and minus 270 for this fight. Let's move on to the next fight on the prelims, and this is going to be the future prelim of the night. We have Nate Landwehr versus Jamall Emmers. Nate the Train, one of the most entertaining fighters that I've had the pleasure of watching. 17-5. He is coming off a loss against Dan Ige, a decision loss, and he's fighting off against Jamall Emmers, 27. And he is 3-2 in his last 5, and he's actually coming off that win against Dennis Buzukja, who was actually fighting earlier in the prelims. Looking at the odds for this fight, and we see that Emmers is right now at minus 222. And last night when I was doing some research, he was like minus 193 or something like that. So I think that would have been a good play, but maybe it's getting a little wider, obviously. So we were right in that regard. as we see the matchup right now, I mean, I see why the odds are favoring Jamall Emmers, to be honest. Yeah, I got to go with Jamall Emmers here. Nate's an entertaining fighter, right? One of my favorite fighters. I think that he fights with a great nonstop pace and style that really endears himself to the fans. He's pretty good on the mic as well. I just think that Emmers has the cardio to not match Nate per se, but I think he has enough of a cardio to keep up with him, and he's enough of a dog on the feet and grappling department that I think he's going to have an answer for a lot of things that Nate's going to throw at him. So I can even see a potential finish here because Jamall Emmers has some really underrated power. If you catch his punches at the end with his straight shots, he has some KO potential. I mean, he has been KOing a lot of people, obviously, but I think you saw in that last fight that if he catches you correct, you might go down because he has some pretty underrated power, and obviously he has a wrestling kind of background as well. So I just think that he has some good cardio as a dog. He's going to be able to have some KO power, 90% takedown defense. I mean, this is going to be a pretty good matchup, but I feel like Jamall Emmers is going to decision Nate here. So give me Jamall Emmers. However, is he a parlay piece right now? I would say minus 222 is probably the limits that I'll go. Last night that, it was minus 193 or so. I thought that was a much better price. Obviously, it's getting a little steamed at this point. So, yeah, I think minus 225, anything over that, I feel like it gets a little tricky because Nate is a dog and he's going to be in his face the entire fight unless he gets KO'd, obviously. So, yeah, for now, give me Jamall Emmers, but I think the price is getting a little high for me as far as how the pricing is. So let's go for the next fight, and this is going to be opening up our main card. We have Chidi Njokuani versus Rhys McKee. Chidi, bang bang. He's 22-10. He is 2-3 in his last 5, and he's obviously fighting, coming off the KO loss against Mikhail Olajic. Rhys McKee, 13-5-1. He's 3-2 in his last 5, coming off that decision loss to Ange Lusa. As we look at the odds for this fight, we see that Chidi is minus 139, opened up at a minus 175. And yeah, I mean, right now I feel like, Chidi, he's still going to be the side for me, but I'm getting a little worried as far as this matchup. I mean, I think that this is a must win for both sides. So, both these fighters are going to come out swinging in my opinion. And man, I see a potential quick finish here. I think that Chidi, I'm going to lean him in this fight just because I feel like it's going to be a striking battle between two guys who have similar frames. Chidi should be just a little better in all aspects. However, he has a losing streak, right? And it kind of concerns me because he's been like finished twice, lost a split decision. To alleviate those concerns a bit, though, I feel that Chidi, he fought some pretty good talent. I mean, Mikhail Olajic is a great striker, also a dog. And, that was a 50-50 fight. Robocop's a great fighter as well, and he KO'd Chidi, but Chidi was doing good in that fight. He lost against Albert Duraev. Obviously, Duraev outgrappled him and lost. I mean, he lost a close split decision. I just don't think that Rhys McKee is the kind of guy that's going to be able to exploit any of those things that Chidi had to deal with. I mean, Rhys just does not have the grappling upside that Duraev did to make that a close fight and negate Chidi's stand-up in a way. And obviously, Robocop, same deal. I think Rhys McKee is going to be the more reckless fighter on the feet here. And I think that Chidi, he's going to fight with a little bit more discipline, absorb less shots, and I feel like he's just going to catch Rhys McKee on the chin at some point with those counter shots. So, yeah, give me Chidi with a KO, but I actually love the plus 105. I mean, Pure Pickers, we alerted you guys of the under 1.5 via Discord last night. Guess what it is now? It's minus 155. So great value that we got on that prop. That's just one of the benefits of being a premium member, a Pure Picks Pro member. So, I mean, those are just one of the closing line values that hopefully it hits, right? But we got some pretty good value in that. So, yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. But, as far as a pick, give me Chidi via KO, but I like the under 1.5. But it is getting a little pricey, so maybe now is not the best entry. Let's move on to the next fight that we have on the prelims, actually the main card. So main card wise, we have Bill Algeo versus Kyle Nelson. Bill Algeo, Senor Perfecto, 18-7. He is 4-1 in his last 5. He's fighting off against Kyle Nelson, 15-5-1. He's coming off that decision victory over Fernando Padilla. We just saw that guy fight, and yeah, pretty impressive win now looking at it. The odds for this fight, -205, actually -220 for Bill Algeo. He opened up at a -250, so there has been some dog action taking on Kyle Nelson, but it's kind of rebounded in the last few days or so. Yeah, looking at this fight, I mean, for now, I'm going to have to side with Bill Algeo. I think that he's going to be able to outpoint, Kyle Nelson. Those were my initial thoughts, right? I think those are my initial thoughts. But just looking at it, after looking at more tape and just looking at how both these guys fight, I mean, I think this is going to be a close decision. Just a little too close. That's why I actually like the -2 over 2.5. I wonder what the odds are right now for that. Is -223, so still the same that I saw it from last night. But I like this fight going decision. I mean, I think that Bill just gets hit too much for my taste. I see Kyle being able to fight on the front foot and outpower Bill Algeo. I mean, Bill Algeo is just not a dangerous guy, and he absorbs from some shots. He kind of reminds me of Billy Q in a way, the way he fights, but obviously he's a little bit more technical than Billy Q because he has a good karate stance, can point fight. But I just feel that it's going to be the constant optics of Kyle Nelson advancing forward and fighting on the front foot, and it's going to be Bill Algeo trying to do some pitter-patter shots from the back foot in his karate style. So, Bill should be able to outland Kyle with superior pace and volume. However, I think that Kyle just has the power advantage in this matchup. Both guys are pretty durable, good cardio. I think Bill does have the advantage here. And I think their grappling is about the same. So yeah, I mean, just given these dynamics, I'm going with Kyle Nelson. I think that he just has the more power and pressure forward to give him some good optics for the scorecards. Pick here is going to be Kyle Nelson via decision. I could even see a split because I think this fight's going to be pretty close. But I actually like the over 2.5 as a potential parlay piece. So yeah, give me that as far as a play, and I'm not going to pick either fighter or lay any units on them. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card. And we have I think one of the more interesting fights on the card. So we have Nursultan Ruzaboyev versus Cedric Dumas. Nursultan is 33-8-2. He's 5-0 in his last 5. He's coming off of that KO victory over Bruno Ferreira as a pretty big dog, I remember. Cedric Dumas, SD Dumas, 9-1, 4-1 his last 5. He's coming off that decision win against Abu Azaitar. Let's look at the odds for this fight right now. We have Ruzaboyev opened up at a -150, and now he's a -250. So some favored action has been taken on Nursultan Ruzaboyev. Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on this is I think that Nursultan is going to be able to dominate. I mean, I know that there's been some love on, MMA, social media that SD is going to be a solid dog. I just don't see it. I mean, I don't think that Dumas is a UFC caliber fighter. He's been given some good matchups to make him look a lot better than he is. And even then, he has struggled with some of these matchups. I mean, he even lost to Josh Frem, who I don't think is good as well. So, struggling with these matchups. I think a guy like Nursultan, I mean, people think that he potentially is like a fraud because there's been some sketchy thing about his like records and his tape hasn't looked the best. But I feel that he alleviated a lot of those concerns for me, at least, when he knocked out Bruno in, pretty early in the first round. People might think it's a fluke, but I think this guy is pretty legit after what I've seen. He proved at the UFC level. I think that Ruzaboyev, he came into the UFC known more as a grappler, but man, coming in short notice and just KOing Bruno like that, I think we get a quick finish here in inside 2 rounds. So I'm going with Nurzulton inside the distance. I can see a lot of ways he can finish this. Let's look what the odds for that are right now. Actually, -210. Yeah, not too much different than the money line, I guess. So yeah, people see a quick finish here, and I kind of see the same. So yeah, give me Nurzulton. Is he a parlay piece for me? I would say so. I don't get the love from SD Dumas. I don't understand it. So yeah, I'm gonna be on this side, going with Nurzulton, Ruzaboyev here. Even at those odds, I'll probably parlay him. Let's move on to the next fight here, and we have another fight on the main card. This is gonna be Bruno Silva versus Chris Weidman, and Bruno Silva, he's actually 1-4 in his last 5. He's coming off that loss via decision to Shara Magomedov. Chris Weidman's also 1-4, 15-7 overall, 1-4 in his last 5. He's coming off that decision loss to Brad Tavares. Before that, he actually broke his leg to Uriah Hall, so that was a kind of comeback fight for him in that sense. Let's look at the odds for this fight right now. We have Bruno Silva at -285, opened up at a -200. Man, it pains me to say this, but I think that this is going to be the Chris Weidman retirement fight here. They put it in his neck of the woods, I think, just for the crowd to kind of cheer him on. I'll be somewhat rooting for him too, because he's a UFC champion, showed a lot of good fights in the UFC, but I think that this is just going to be too dangerous of a fight for him. I mean, Brad Tavares was not a dangerous fighter, and he was almost finished in that fight, Chris Weidman. So I mean, the leg kicks were there all day for Brad Tavares. Bruno Silva is much more dangerous than Brad Tavares. I mean, he KO'd Brad Tavares 11 months ago, so just want to point that out. Yeah, I just think that Silva, yes, he is inconsistent, right? But he showed a lot in that Shara fight. I mean, he lost, but he still didn't give up. Brandon Allen, that was actually a pretty close fight, 50-50 on the stand-up, right? And, I think that was a closer fight than what people would assume. But, he lost that fight, and I just think he's the much more dangerous guy here. At this point, Chris Weidman, he's a tough dude, but I think the time has come for him to potentially retire. I mean, I feel that he has just looked much worse in his losses than, Bruno Silva even in his losses. So I think Silva is going to catch him via KO. I see this as a parlay piece as well. I think I'm fading Chris Weidman at this point, but I'm going to root for him because, I mean, he's a veteran, did a lot for the game, the MMA and the UFC, and, I hope that he ends off on a high note, but this is reminding me of when Chris Gutierrez KO'd Frankie Edgar. So it's giving me those kind of vibes, and I see similar things happening in this fight. So yeah, give me Bruno Silva via KO, and I'll probably stuff him in some parlays as well. Let's move on to the next fight that we have. This is going to be the co-main event of the evening. We have Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley. Vicente Luque, 22-9-1. He's 3-2 in his last 5, coming off that decision win over RDA. Fighting off against Joaquin Buckley, 17-6, 3-2 in his last 5, and he's 2-0 in the 170-pound division. So he's been cutting down to 170 after a stint at middleweight, and he's looked great in the last 2 fights. Let's move on to the odds for this fight. We have Vicente Luque at -115, open up at -160. I agree with the line movement here. I'm going with Buck here, Joaquin Buckley. I think that he is going to be, he's going to show some improvement in this fight. I mean, I've been following him on IG. This guy looks locked in. I mean, he's obviously a pretty entertaining guy as well, but I feel like he knows that this is going to be a career-defining fight for him, right? Against Vicente Luque, kind of a name at this point in the welterweight division. I think Luque's a warrior. I mean, he's been in many battles. He's, throughout the years, but the damage that he's just been taking has been pretty heavy, especially in that last loss that he had against Jeff Neal. That was a career-altering loss, in my opinion. He even admitted himself that he had a brain bleed after that fight. So, not the best optics there. I think that his wrestling and grappling were pretty impressive in the last fight. He was out muscling RDA, but man, we have to keep in mind that RDA is a lightweight and he's past his prime. He's old. I think Buckley is just going to be a much different beast for a guy like Vicente. I mean, Buckley is a former 185-pound middleweight. He was small for the division, obviously, but he was still fighting at 185. And man, he's cutting down to 170. He just has looked fantastic. I think that this is obviously his natural weight class, and I feel like he's going to be the more dangerous guy here with the plenty of power. I mean, Vicente's no joke on the feet, but I feel like Buckley's going to be more dangerous on the feet, and he's going to be the quicker guy too. I mean, I think Buckley's a physical specimen. I'm saying, man, I think Buckley's on KO him, unfortunately, and I like Buckley as a -105 dog. I mean, you know, I think those prices. I think he should be the favorite in this fight. I don't know why he's not. He probably should be the favorite once the line flips throughout the week. I see that happening. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a -130, 140 at the end of the week. So yeah, give me Joaquin Buckley here. I think he's a solid money line play for me. Let's move to the main event of the evening. We have Erin Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. Erin Blanchfield, 12-1, 4-0, 5-0 in her last five. She's coming off that decision win over Talia Santos, fighting against Manon Fiorot, 11-1, 5-0 in her last five, and she is coming off that decision win over Rose Namajunas. Looking at the odds for this fight, we have Erin at a -182 favorite, open up at a pick'em at -110. So interesting line movement. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stay away from backing either fighter for the money line purposes. I mean, I feel like this is gonna be a close fight. I'm gonna side with Erin in this main event. I think the over 4.5 is actually a little bit better than backing either fighter due to their durability and just gas tank. I believe the gap on the feet will be wide. Erin has just not shown me enough in this area to confidently lay units on her. I do believe that Erin does have the cardio, pressure, and pace to have a potential ceiling as a grappling champion in this division, right? Especially with the opponents that she might be facing. However, I just feel like the tendency to eat shots at times, doesn't really bode well for her in matchups like this. I mean, I do like that she has a 62% striking defense, but Manon Fiorot is pretty dangerous in this division. I mean, she has some power striking capabilities. She's also a technical fighter as well. I see the fight going this way. I think that Erin is going to do her best impression of, Merab or a Colby Covington, prime Colby Covington. And I think that she's just going to try to keep Manon on the cage, threatening takedowns for the majority of the fight. So she's going to do a lot of cage pushing. When they're apart, though, when, Manon is able to get off the fence, I think that there's going to be a major gap in space. So it's going to be the judging. The judges are going to score the fight based on that. I think that Erin is going to do a fair bit of cage pushing. She's going to be successful, but there's going to be moments where she's not successful, and then she gets pieced up on the feet, and then they're going to have to decide, hey, did Manon do enough damage in this round, or did Erin control enough in this round? And it's going to be a wacky, close decision. I can even see it being a split decision, So because of that, I mean, I think that this is going to be a close decision, but man, it's going to be Erin's backyard too. I think she's from that area. I mean, I feel that personally, I feel that Manon's going to win this fight, but they're going to give it to Erin. I just have a strange feeling that's going to happen. So yeah, the pick here is going to be Erin via decision. I actually like the over 4.5. It is getting a little wide though. Last night I was looking at it. It was -115. Opened up at +110. So maybe there's a little bit more value on that. But yeah, I think this is probably the limits of where I'll kind of play it here. I think the over 4.5 looked decent. Maybe the fight goes the distance could look decent as well. But we'll monitor that line movement going forward and see how we can kind of make plays there. So yeah. Erin by decision, but over 4.5, that looks solid. That about does it for the breakdown of Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot. I think that these fights are going to be pretty interesting, and I think that entertaining is going to be the right word for these fights as well. I think they're going to be entertaining. Definitely more entertaining than last week, and I thought last week wasn't that bad of a card. So we'll be tuning in for sure, and hopefully, you guys will be tuning as well. Pure Pickers, best of luck this week. Please sign up for Pure Picks Pro member and just kind of take the advantages, right? Obviously, live betting has been pretty solid. We're going to try to get the better plays out this week for Bet and May tips. We already have a few plays, right? The one that I mentioned about Chidi at plus 105. Now it's like minus 155. So hopefully we caught some good action there, and we'll continue to find some good action throughout the week as well. We're going to wrap it up here. Once again, best of luck, everybody. We're out.